Hello everyone, welcome to week 13. This week, our final week of course content is on project selection. Now, right before we get started into the content for this week, which by the way, it's a short lecture, so um, should be able to get through this pretty quickly. Some exam information. So I've had a couple messages come through. I just wanted to remind everyone that there is technically no formal date for completion of this exam. Rather, it is done over a time period. So you have over the course of the exam period to do the exam. Now, you still only get one shot, so don't think you get multiple attempts at it or anything like that. You have one opportunity to take the test. The test is in the exact same format as the midterm. It is multiple choice. It is true and false. Now, it is cumulative, so all course content is fair game. So make sure that you are familiar with all of the course content, both before and after the midterm. You do have 2 hours to complete the midterm, or the final exam, sorry. With that in mind, that you have plenty of time per question. Last thing I'll say is you are using the lockdown browser, so be prepared for that. Make sure you're in a quiet area, you have a secure internet connection, and you're close to a power outlet. So just to be very clear about this, because I know in the past this has been kind of a point of confusion, you must hit submit for your mark to go into the system. If you do not do that and the exam locks you out and gives you a 0 because you attempted the exam, there's not much I can do. I can't let you rewrite that test because you've seen at least a portion of the questions. Make sure that everything is set up and good to go. Now, of course, there are some times where there's technical difficulties. In those circumstances, we will have to try and figure out an alternative for that. But those are few and far between. Those are pretty rare. Make sure everything is set up. I can't stress that enough. One other thing I will say, I've been marking assignment 2. My goal, I am trying my hardest to get them all marked before the exam period. I can't make any promises that it will all be marked by then, but I will do my best. What I typically do is if I don't get the assignment 2s all marked by the exam period, what I do is I have to keep at least one grade back so that you guys don't calculate your final marks or anything like that. It is school policy. So what I do is, because I didn't release assignment 2 in time, you typically can see your exam mark, right? And then I withhold assignment 2 marks, and then you'll get your final mark whenever the university releases them. Okay, so I just want to clear the air with that. I will say assignment 2 is typically well done, so I'm hoping no one is stressing about that. And with that, let's dive into course content.
So essentially, throughout this lecture, we're going to assume that you have the ability to select a project regarding anything you want within the facility or the context that you're working. Now, we need to identify that when selecting a project, the first thing you should be thinking about is that you can't pick a project that's too long, because what's going to happen is in the process of fixing and completing that project, new issues are going to arise. The solutions you may have come up with in the beginning by the end might not be of value anymore as things change throughout the environment, especially in fast-paced environments. So you can't pick a project that's too long. On the other side of things, you can't pick a project that's too short. Sometimes the easiest projects realistically don't add much value. So if you're looking from a quality perspective, for example, if you're going to spend time, I don't know, spell checking the policy binders or the standard operating procedures, the SOPs, you're probably not really adding much value. I have actually seen this happen before, where a quality professional will get into a setting. First thing they do, they take that, select the quickest, most easiest fix thing to heart, and they go and they do spell checking for the SOPs. Now it might take them a day or 2 days or whatnot, so it might not seem like a lot of time is lost, but they really haven't added any significant impact into their place of business. All they've done is done a minor fix in one aspect of the business that really wasn't impacting anything at all. People still understood what the SOPs were trying to say despite spelling mistakes or grammatical issues. Really at the base level, trainees aren't going to care too much about a missing comma, right? Now in an academic setting or something that's going out to stakeholders, completely different story. But in this aspect, you want to pick a project that's a little bit more significant. Okay, so those are kind of the bounds when we talk about project selection. So we don't want a project that's going to take too long. We don't want a project that's too short, that doesn't add any value. So how do we pick a project? Now, to maximize the success of the selected project, there's a couple things we want to consider. Now, we want to consider the problem that we're trying to solve should probably be reoccurring, right? That means it's a significant issue. This tells you that there's value in solving it. The problem must have a narrow scope. Once again, this speaks towards projects that are too long. If we have a narrow scope, we kind of eliminate the possibility of that project being far too long because we're not trying to tackle everything at once. Now, this is more of a bonus when it says must be available here with the metrics and measurements. Another way to look at this one is just that metrics and measurements are can be developed and available for collection, right? This isn't saying that there's already a process in place to collect your measurements, although that is absolutely 100% a bonus. For example, when I was in long-term care, we already had a process in place for collecting all the metrics and measurements I needed to start my falls prevention program. Process under consideration must be in control, so you must have some sort of control over the process. If you don't, you may be wasting your time because you can try to implement improvement methodology, and the person in control of that process is just going to look at you and say no. And then you've wasted time, you can't add any value, so make sure that that process is under control in a way that you can affect change in it. Now, there must be a direct correlation to customer satisfaction. This can be kind of on the peripheral, and what I mean by that is you can do something to enhance a procedure or a process, and customer satisfaction is a very warranted kind of side effect of it, right? If we can make the surgeons happy in the OR suite by making their process go a lot smoother, you reduce the risk of error, and that patient is probably going to have a better outcome, better quality of life. You have customer satisfaction, right? You can also look at the customer as a surgeon. So there are ways to frame it as well. The other consideration, so you want a project that's objective and there's tangible cost reduction amounts. So when I implement when I select my project, I want to be able to show that yes, there is cost reduction capability here. What you can sometimes have happen is you run through the considerations for selecting a project, and obviously more than one potential project is going to pop up, right? There are several considerations that are rather broad, so you will have to choose between, okay, which project do I start with? Now, what we have is a project selection hierarchy. What this means is that when faced with multiple potential projects, you can use a hierarchy to help you decide which one to tackle first. Now we have 3 levels in our hierarchy. 1 is customer related, 2 company related, 3 internal process improvement. And what we want to do is if all 3 of these are present, we're going to tackle the customer related one first. This customer related project is going to look at external customer satisfaction issues. So again, we want to tackle the customer's needs first. And remember, the customer is not just kind of who's receiving the product in the sense of a retail sense. It can be whoever's on the receiving end of the process as well. So it can be patients, nurses, doctors, even stakeholders, CEOs. It all depends what the process is. But their satisfaction is always pretty much of utmost importance. Okay. Now that's not to always go along with the typical retail thought of the customer is always right. because sometimes, well, first of all, customers all want different things, and in healthcare, we can't always address all of them at once, right? So if someone says, the knee replacement surgery is too long and too painful, it might not be possible to make it any shorter, right? At the end of the day, when it comes to patient care, it's that quality of life kind of aspect, which is superseding customer satisfaction needs. The second is company related. So these are things that are going to fix and improve items. It can be related to cost reduction or efficiency. We want to kind of break through bottleneck operations. That means where if you look at like a process line, there's one point in the line where everything slows down because there's just an overwhelming volume of it and not enough capability to handle that volume. And also to address process capabilities. And then third, internal process improvements. So this is where we're looking at operational metrics and working on improving those. Okay, so next we're going to talk about a couple things to keep in mind when selecting your project. So we're really looking at in this slide, the link between quality function needs and the overall strategic plan. Okay, so what we're talking about when we think about this is that we have to remember that the most important element within the organization is that there is a focus on quality function and support for quality within that organization's overall plan. Okay, so if you think about everything we've talked about to date, all of that is possible because the organization has a quality improvement mindset. This will be displayed in that overall strategic plan. Okay, so key considerations that we may see should be like competition, cost, differentiation of product, and usage of appropriate tools. This is all talking about quality function needs, right? And where quality kind of plays a role within the organization. And once again, this should be presented in that overall strategic plan. Next up, we have the link between strategic plan and quality plan. So this is the next most important issue aside from the previous slide. And this is correlating the strategic plans with an actual quality plan. So you're going to look at that strategic plan and begin developing the quality plan itself from there. Now, once again, the organization must be willing to develop these programs in order to receive feedback, partake in corrective action, also assist with data collection, processing and analysis, and process and product development. Okay, so remember, as the quality team, you can't do everything alone. You need an organization that is willing to help you with these things. So the next thing for us to discuss is the theory of variation. So we've talked about this before, but we're going to bring it up again. We've talked about common variation and special variation, right? I believe it was last lecture. So common variation is the random kind of material prevalent or normal variation that we experience day to day. It is predictable and we do our best to control for it, but it's stuff that's going to happen. Now, special variation is that of abnormal and unpredictable variation that occurs. It's typically very or just somewhat specific, but at the end of the day, it has a knowable cause, which means that we can address it and we can limit that kind of variation. One thing that we didn't discuss last lecture is that there's actually an equation for variation, and it is something that we need to take into account. And the more kind of factors that we have going on in a process or procedure, the more total variation we can experience. So for example, if we're just looking at a two-factor process, what we have is total variation is equal to the variation due to factor A plus variation due to factor B plus the variation due to the interaction between the two, and then the variation due to sampling error. Now, again, keep in mind, this is just regarding two factors. It gets exponentially larger the more factors that we add into the process. So if there's 3, you're going to basically have, variation due to A, variation due to B, interaction to AB, interaction to BC, interaction to AC, and then variation due to sampling error. Again, it's going to grow the more factors you add into it. Now, once again, a lot of the stuff we do revolves around strategic plans, strategic planning. So the quality function mission is very important to strategic planning. Okay, so our focus here is ensuring that the mission of the quality improvement is going to align with the business strategy of the organization. Remember, we work for the organization. We're not just here to improve things just because, you know, we're perfectionists kind of thing, right? It's always got to have a purpose. So in this kind of component, what we have to do is we have to look at the organizational mission statement, and if need be, this is where we start. What we need to understand is that that mission statement should be understood by everyone within and outside of the organization to understand what's going on with that organization, and that key driving forces for customer satisfaction are identified so that the quality improvement can begin by establishing priorities, defining policies, analyzing and resolving conflicts in a cost-benefit manner, and then maintaining all quality improvement activities. Now, again, this is under the assumption that you're coming into an organization that is open to kind of the quality improvement mindset, because it takes a special kind of management team to allow you to come in and start playing with policies and establishing priorities. So oftentimes what the first step is going to be in anything is just getting kind of the management group on board with your quality mindset. All right, and this is something that I've experienced myself, where going into specific facilities, I actually have to kind of show the worth of having a quality aspect to kind of the operational capability of the facility before I can dive any deeper into actually tackling specific projects. Because if you don't have kind of the buy-in for the quality initiative that you're proposing, it's just not going to stick. Now, just a quick refresher, because again, these are things that you're going to have to deal with. I know in my professional experience, I've actually been asked to revamp an organization's mission, vision, and values. So it's good to have these things fresh in your head. A mission is, or a mission statement, is basically why that organization exists, right? What's the purpose to it? The vision speaks towards key processes that assist in fulfilling that mission. And then the values are key indicators that affirm the vision and the mission. So they're all interconnected, right? The values are going to tie everything together, whereas the vision is kind of the key processes that essentially manifest through that organization's mission, right? So it's kind of a stepwise procedure. So next, metrics and goals that drive organizational performance. So in order for performance to have any value, there must be metrics and then associated goals, right? So we have to be able to understand how that performance meets or contributes to the goals of the organization. So fundamental requirements used as metrics can include customer satisfaction. So remember, these bullet points are going to kind of branch out. Okay, so it's not just kind of, oh, I'm going to look at customer satisfaction, so there's my key indicator. All right, customer satisfaction I might be looking at things like, if I look at ER wait times, going to be wait time itself, the crowded nature of the ER, right? If there's long wait times, chances are the ER is going to be crowded, and other kind of metrics that feed into customer satisfaction. There are then economic ramifications. So these are things that are typically cost associative. We then have environmental and legal impacts. So these are things that are also going to be outside of the control of the organization, right? We're looking at laws and policies, and potentially, things like fines for infringing on any sort of environmental or legal boundaries set in place. There's worthiness. This is more so talking towards worth to the organization, and then the applicability in regard to the metric. So next we're talking about kind of what resource requirements we would need to manage and maintain kind of quality functioning for our project. So these typical things are the appropriate and applicable training. So the staff under kind of your control, they are appropriately trained in what you need them to do. There's knowledgeable personnel, so they know what they're doing. They bring knowledge to the table. There's adequate leadership commitment, speaking towards the organization's view in regard to the quality improvement initiative. inspection and testing availability, that you have the ability, or I should say what's the word I'm looking for? You have the opportunity to perform inspection and testing, right? Sometimes you'll have organizations that say, yes, we're on board with quality improvement, but every time you go to inspect or you go to test, it's never the right time to do that, and you never actually get a chance to collect the metrics that you need. Then there's work performance personnel, and then verification capability, speaking towards kind of the ability to recheck your data and verify that it's applicable. So again, here we're basically reiterating what we had discussed earlier, which means that this is probably of some serious importance in regards to selection of a project. Basically answering what is the significance of the project that you're about to select. So when you select a project, it has to be worth pursuing in regard to a return on investment as well as customer satisfaction. So that kind of speaks towards the why you're selecting the project. You want to select something that's applicable, right? Like I said, you don't want to go into an organization and say, okay, I know that you're having issues with your ER wait times, but hold on, let me spell check your SOPs, right? That project is not going to bring about a return on investment or realistically help with customer satisfaction. You're probably going to want to tackle the problem at hand. Now, suitable projects, again, we can identify them in various ways. So reiterating what we discussed before, there's a recurring event, right? There's a recurring problem that requires addressing. There's a problem of narrow scope, right? This kind of speaks towards the easy problems to pick off. There's available metrics and or measurements for that project, which makes your job significantly easier. You have control of the process, and there's customer satisfaction that's attached to that project. Now, it should be fairly obvious that data is the driving force behind any kind of quality improvement initiative. You need data to understand what's going on, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. Without data, you have no initiative. So there needs to be a strong emphasis whenever selecting your project, or even past that point, of developing a strong data collection plan. We talked about it before, where it's very important that you don't pass off the data collection just in terms of problems arising. This just stresses the importance of data collection, and again, why you should be present when data collection is going on. Without that appropriate and applicable data, project results are probably going to be questionable, and this is not a good thing, right? When you're standing in front of a group of stakeholders, most likely the ones that are going to decide if the program is going to continue or be halted, and they're going to ask questions about what you've done. If you do not have data to back up what you're suggesting, or your appraisal of the process that you were supposed to analyze, you're probably not going to have very happy stakeholders, right? Remember, they're most likely paying you to do this kind of thing. They're trying to improve a specific aspect of their organization. They are going to be harsh on some of the recommendations that you present. You need data to really back up and reinforce what you're suggesting, and essentially think of it in terms of you have to convince a group of people who may not have an in-depth knowledge of a certain process or procedure, and you have to convince them through the data, not just through kind of your suggestions because you feel like this is going to help. The data is kind of your bartering chip. It's your currency in the quality improvement world. So when we look at measurement, what we really want is we want measurements that have improvement-oriented measures, right? So our metrics, things that we can witness improvement in, right? If I'm looking at the number of falls, I want to pick a metric that is going to show me when I have success in reducing the number of falls. Also, we want to have projects that provide data with a rationale or a response. So we don't want anything that provides no data and there's no reason why we don't have data. We want data, and we want it to be purposeful data. We also, when we're looking at measurement associated projects, we need to ensure that the employees know why things are being measured, right? It's typically not good enough to say, hey, I'm going to do this audit, and that's all you need to know, right? I find with employee buy-in, if you tell them why you're doing something, they're more apt to help you. And oftentimes you're going to need employee assistance with collecting some of your data, right? So including them into in the why we have to do things really will really benefit your quality improvement. You're also going to want to ensure employees know what to do if negative trends occur. So this is more so in regards to kind of that maintenance phase of long-term projects. When you're doing long-term projects and you have that kind of measurement built into it, you want to know that employees know what to do when that measurement starts to portray a negative trend. And the reason for that is if the employees know what to do, then you don't have to do anything at all. They already have the solution to the problem and they can enact it already. Whereas if this isn't the case, it's just going to cause a whole host of inefficiencies. Now, when we're talking about performance measurements, we can actually have three types of performance measures, okay? So we can have, the first type is strategic measures, which look at market segmentation and competitive strength. So looking across at the market that you're in, looking at competitors, seeing where you stack up in regard to your competitors. There's organizational measures, all right? So leanness, so this is talking about lean methodology, so reduction of the waste. Culture within the organization, incentives, training, and development. And then we can have process measures, which speak about improving operational metrics. So I will say, just because we used a similar slide for the hierarchies, this is not hierarchical, okay? So I don't have to look at strategic measures before organization or process measures, okay? They're unrelated in that sense. This is just kind of the buckets that they all fit in. Now, with all that said, when you're selecting a project, kind of like how I opened this lecture with, it's typically done on a needs analysis or done in a quickest to solve priority within reason, right? Like I said, you don't want to go into a business and say, I'm going to spell check your SOPs. That's probably not going to go over well. What you do want to do, look at kind of a little bit bigger problems, and then you can pick off the easiest ones there. However, selection of the project itself will be unique to the environment in which you are operating within, right? And the organization that you're operating within. They will have their own preferences. You might get into an organization that says, no, we don't want you to pick the quickest to solve, despite that being kind of a best practice way. They're going to tell you to focus on the hardest thing to tackle and then work your way down from there. Because some organizations will feel like they have their own personnel that can tackle the easier ones. You're supposed to be the quality expert, so they're going to attach you to the hardest one, okay? Again, this is going to depend on the organization that you're operating within. However, this lecture was just to give you kind of a basis on, you go in and they say, do whatever you want.
All right, and that's the end of course content for this course. So congratulations, you made it the full semester. With that, this week we talked about project selection. It seems like something that's very easy and something that sometimes is very easy because you're told what your project is going to be, but there is an art to it when you get to self-select your project. So I hope you found all of this material useful. I hope it helps you in whatever career path you choose. And with that, if you have any questions before the exam period or during the exam period, as long as you haven't taken the exam yet, feel free to reach out through Canvas. Give me about 24 hours. I try to check it as often as I can. But yeah, I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right, thanks everybody.